Welcome to This Explainer. So, you know that weird creeping feeling you get sometimes? Like your phone knows a little too much about you? Well, if you've ever felt uneasy about exactly how much of your life is exposed online, you are in exactly the right place. We aren't just going to sit here and talk about cybersecurity in some vague, boring textbook way. No, today we are going to actively transform your digital posture. We're going to take you from being a hopelessly vulnerable passive consumer of tech to a highly resilient, fortified operator.
Okay, here's our exact blueprint for today. We'll quickly cover the passive user myth, design your digital defense architecture, harden the perimeter, minimize your data footprint, protect the human, and finally get you set up as a fortified operator.
Part 1. The myth of the passive user.
We've got to start by completely dismantling the absolute most dangerous assumption you make every single time you pick up a device. I want you to honestly evaluate your current relationship with the screens around you. Are you just casually looking through a window at the digital world? Or is the digital world actively reaching through that window, profiling you, and extracting value from your attention?
The harsh reality is, existing in the modern digital world requires active defense because you are constantly being probed. Literally every single click, every random form you fill out, and every minute you spend idly scrolling. It's a direct interaction with highly sophisticated systems. Think about this for a second. The average user's data points are often bundled up and sold thousands of times a day. Thousands. These systems have one relentless goal: to extract your data, exploit your vulnerabilities, and capture your attention. You're never just passively observing, you are always participating in a data exchange. But hey, once we accept that reality, we can start playing defense.
Which brings us to Part 2, your digital defense architecture. Now that we recognize the threat is pretty much constant, we can begin designing your personalized defense system. And the stakes here are incredibly clear when you compare a vulnerable user to a resilient operator. It's the shift from, broad tracking and oversharing to having zero ambient tracking and a minimal data footprint. For cyber threats, it's going from casually clicking unknown links and hitting "Remind me tomorrow" on updates to systematically verifying senders and treating auto updates as absolutely mandatory. And honestly, perhaps most importantly for your mental resilience, it's moving from that endless doom scrolling to critical awareness and strict offline boundaries. This is your roadmap.
But before we actually apply those changes, we need some context. Defense isn't one size fits all, so you've got to first configure your personal blueprint. Step 1 is choosing your core hardware stack. Basically, are you operating primarily in an Apple environment with iOS and Mac, or are you a PC person using Android and Windows? Step 2 is defining your operational arena. Are we securing your personal life accounts right now, or are you setting up a secure business workspace? Selecting your primary tech stack and your focus area dictates exactly how you're going to apply the tools we're about to cover.
All right, Layer 1, hardening the perimeter.
With that foundational blueprint set for your specific life, we can construct the outermost walls of your fortress. To truly harden the perimeter, we have to do two things at the exact same time. First, you need to treat software updates as non-negotiable security patches. If you delay an update, you are literally leaving documented, known vulnerabilities wide open for exploitation. It's like leaving your front door wide open when you know there's a burglar in the neighborhood. Second, we have to shrink your attack surface. Think about that messy, tangled web of forgotten shared folders and legacy online profiles you've built up over the years. By systematically deleting unused mobile apps and dead accounts, you transform a chaotic, unmanaged vulnerability into a tight, minimal, defensible perimeter. You're basically giving hackers fewer doors to knock on.
Moving on to Layer 2, minimizing data footprints.
Okay, so we've locked the external doors, but now we need to look at the specific data you are actively emitting from the inside. Maintaining control over your digital footprint means actively starving external databases of your personal info. How do you actually do that? Well, you ruthlessly disable ambient location services on your phone, only grant access when you are actively navigating somewhere, and stop oversharing. Withhold your middle names and secondary phone numbers, and honestly, never ever fill out optional online forms. If it doesn't have an asterisk, leave it blank. You must minimize the sheer volume of data that can be scraped, packaged, and sold by third parties. You've got to starve the system.
Now, as we secure that data, we have to talk about how we actually lock it away. Using complex, unique passwords stored securely in a password manager is absolutely mandatory today. Let me be perfectly clear on that. But they aren't enough on their own. Security experts note that stolen credentials are often tested and sold on the dark web within minutes of a data breach. Why? Because a password alone, no matter how insanely complex it is, represents a catastrophic single point of failure. If that one string of characters is compromised, the whole shebang falls apart. So, this is where two-factor authentication, or 2FA, acts as your heavy vault gates. By requiring physical proof like a code generated by the smartphone physically sitting in your hand or a physical hardware key, you ensure that even if some attacker on the other side of the globe manages to steal your master password, they are entirely blocked without physical access to your authenticated device. It completely eliminates that single point of failure and forces the attacker to just hit a brick wall.
I want you to treat these 4 specific settings as your absolute, mandatory baseline configuration for a resilient digital life. Password Manager, on. Two-factor authentication, on for all critical accounts. Auto updates, permanently enabled. Ambient location tracking, off. Seriously, if you finish this explainer and do nothing else, please flip these 4 digital switches today.
Now for Layer 3, protecting the human.
Because if those tech switches are flipped, we can safely focus entirely on the operator inside the fortress, you. Constant connectivity causes severe digital fatigue. It drains our cognitive resources and leaves you incredibly vulnerable to manipulation, phishing, and just general emotional reactiveness. When you're constantly bombarded by notifications, your basic decision-making starts to degrade. The antidote to this? Strict boundary enforcement. You must actively choose to implement app time limits and schedule daily, guilt-free offline hours. And look, this isn't just about feeling better or doing some trendy digital detox. It is a structural security requirement to combat the exhaustion that hackers and algorithms desperately rely on.
A hardened perimeter is completely useless if the human operator just invites the threat inside. You could have 2FA, insanely complex passwords, and zero attack surface, but if you are so mentally fatigued that you blindly tap approve on a fraudulent login prompt, the fortress falls instantly. True cybersecurity is not merely technical. Actually, scratch that. It is fundamentally psychological. Your technology stack's structural integrity relies entirely on your personal mental resilience.
Which brings us to the most aggressive threat to that mental resilience, the algorithmic echo chamber. Algorithms manipulate your attention by design. They amplify misinformation and outrage to keep you scrolling, trapping you in this continuous feedback loop. Enforcing offline limits acts as a mechanical circuit breaker against this digital deception. When you schedule dedicated time away from the screen, you are literally shattering the echo chamber and routing your mind back to the physical world, back to reality. It clears that cognitive fog so you can operate securely.
Final phase, becoming a fortified operator.
So we've built the technical walls and we've secured the mind of the operator. You now possess a comprehensive, empowered strategy. By actively shielding your privacy by ditching ambient tracking, by neutralizing threats through mandatory auto updates in 2FA, by minimizing your attack surface through pruning dead accounts, and finally, by guarding your mental health against algorithmic manipulation through strict offline boundaries, you've done it. You have completely transformed your digital reality. You've successfully mastered your digital resilience, and you are no longer prey.
But listen, knowledge without action is just trivia, right? So as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Your technological perimeter is mapped out, and you know exactly how to harden it. But will you actually have the discipline to enforce your mental circuit breakers tomorrow? I'm challenging you to implement this entire blueprint today. Go delete those old apps, turn on 2FA, schedule an hour of offline time tonight. Because I promise you, the algorithms, the data brokers, and the cyber threats, they certainly aren't taking a day off. Stay vigilant, stay fortified, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.